the spring semester of the Holloway along with Jane Gregory and Mary Wilson. And we're really thrilled to have Tongo Eisen-Martin here all the way from across the bay, reading with our own Ishmael Muhammad. Before I turn the mic over to various introducers and poets, let me switch hats for a second and invite you to come out tomorrow at noon, if you haven't had your fill, to Lunch Poems to hear Rosa Alcala read at 12 in the Morrison Library in Doe. And then come back April 24th for Brenda Hillman, who will be reading in our last Holloway of the semester. And after the reading, please go over there and talk to the lovely people from Moe's who've brought both of Tongo's books, which I recommend you not only look at, but take away with you, and maybe speak to the poet for a second before you leave. And with that, let's get started. Olivia Young will be introducing Ishmael, and then Leo Dunsker will come up and introduce Tongo, who will then take us home. All right, thank you for being here.
Good evening, and welcome to today's Holloway series in poetry. I have the distinguished opportunity and honor to introduce to you today a friend. Ishmael Muhammad and I became friends in a span of 2 days in what could easily be re-scripted as a bad documentary on the trials and woes of being a doctoral student here at Berkeley. Stuck in LA after spontaneously canceling my flight home, a trait that I am not very well known for, in hopes of seeing a performance art piece for my dissertation. Ishmael, without hesitancy, offered me a ride back to the Bay. However, per Ishmael's usual poetic flair, instead of subscribing to the script of trodden doctoral student, on our 6-hour drive back to Berkeley, he spoke instead only of his dreams of being a writer and critic, telling stories hidden and silenced, added grounding to the uneven surface of knowledge and narrative. He spoke of writing critical and thoughtful interpretations of contemporary events and histories, of placing his own vulnerability at the center of his words, of needing his writing as a space of community, with each written piece attempting perhaps simply to open the field of play a little bit more for Black writers. However, what was spoken in as intention 2 years ago has wildly exceeded even his imagination at the time. Ishmael Muhammad is a writer and critic. His work appears in publications such as Slate, New Republic, the Los Angeles Review of Books, Real Life Catapult, and the recently released second edition of Berkeley's own The Black Aesthetic. He is a recipient of several fellowships, including the National Book Critics Circle, Emerging Critic Fellowship, and the Simpson Family Literary Fellowship. He would be shy to tell you that he has been contacted by the publishing agent of Ta-Nehisi Coates for representation, and that he spends his free time writing a novel circling the histories of Black queer archives of the Great Migration. Today, he introduces Tongo Eisen-Martin with his own work, a speculative fiction story about Black people abandoning their bodies and forsaking the earth. So, without further ado, I introduce to you my friend, Ishmael Muhammad.
Can you guys hear me? Thank you, Olivia, for that. Yeah, I love you. You're great. Thank you to the Holloway, to Jeffrey and Jane and Mary for organizing it. Thank you to Tongo for appearing tonight. I actually changed my mind at the last minute. I'm not going to read the sci-fi story. It was very long in the second person, and I thought it would be strange for this venue. So I'm going to read instead an excerpt from my novel, and then a few flash fictions, and we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to read from the middle portion of the novel, which is the title of everything said in the beginning, which tells a story of a man whose father dies, and in the process of going through his father's archives, he discovers that his father might have had a queer relationship with a man in his youth. So I'm going to start there. When I first returned to the house, it was by myself. That was the only way it could be. Mere hours after Cedars-Sinai phoned me, I arrived in Los Angeles to claim my father's body. That accomplished, I drove to my childhood home before anybody could disturb the detritus of our family's narrative. That first night, I slept in Franklin's library, supine on his favorite Turkish rug that was, by then, ragged at the edges, shivering with my coat tucked beneath my head. Within a minute, I felt tears cooling my face. Within 5, I regretted not making good with Franklin before he died. Then my thoughts cleared, and all I could hear was the walls pulsing with wind and cats mewling in the house's crawl spaces. I tried to escape my father's orbit. Now all I could see was my place in it. Staring up through the window into blackness, I knew what my job was. The next morning, light began to fill the room early, but I was up with the sun, sitting at my father's antique wooden writing desk, the one I'd never been allowed to touch as a child. It was so easy now to run my hands along its grooves and press my fingers into them, until the splinters threatened puncture. My father had carved his name grimly into one corner, Franklin Evans. Books lay open the way paramedics left them upon removing the body. Not the heavy law books, but the dog-eared anthropological tomes. The man was a lawyer by trade, but an amateur raceman in his retirement. A few notebooks were scattered across the desk with illegible notes scribbled from margin to margin. When legible, they were little more than slogans. It was difficult for me not to imagine the old man slumped over Diop, or message to the black man after the heart attack, his prosperous, plump body shivering, but his hands still clasping those books. I opened the desk drawers to take stock. More books, old legal notes frayed and turned yellow with age, correspondence to and from clients, everything arranged into neat stacks with no discernible logic. I didn't have the patience to read or catalog anything, just removed everything drawer by drawer, 2 hands at a time, until the room was dense with a musty scent, and the floor disappeared beneath stacks of paper. I moved quickly, but it took me a long time, and when I came to the last drawer, it was noon. The last one was jammed and wouldn't open completely. I reached back into it and struggled to remove the book. Sorry, another book, different this time. A photo album, unfamiliar. It was filled with people I didn't know and a few whom I did. Men mostly, bronze-colored and clothed in dingy work attire and smartly tailored Sunday suits, smiling gritty, forced smiles beneath faded sunlight. On one page, I recognized a young Franklin next to a few other men who were preening like they expected the photo to end up in jet and not a dead man's drawer. My uncles. They all raised calloused hands up to the camera with evident pride. Franklin's stout figure looked meager beside his brothers' hulking bodies with too tight suits stretched across muscular frames. He was many inches shorter than the others, and, as if to make up for it, his body was captured mid-stride, with short arms flexed and booted feet lunging towards the unseen photographer, as if he was threatening to grab the camera and take the picture himself. His broad face had already acquired the scowl that marked my memory. His eyes sat deep and hard beneath a slightly protruding forehead, expressive of nothing besides eager determination. In the background sat the old gas station the brothers had owned together before fleeing Detroit, with the red, white, and blue awning over the shop, proclaiming simply gas beneath a smattering of bird shit. Weeds already crowded around the Ford pumps at which a few customers looked on and filled up their Cadillacs and Lincoln Continentals. On the photo's back, the same careless handwriting from the notebook stated, Detroit, 1973, me, Ralph, Thomas, Dutch at station. The day passed like that. I combed through photos of men who clothed their feet in suits, sharp hats, and wingtip shoes, though their callous hands still showed. Men who worked at cement factories or car plants or construction sites, and when that was done, went home to no comforts in particular, besides dimly grateful families, meals warmed over on the stove, familiarly grooved couches, and Stevie Wonder's or Sam Cooke's voice sometimes, when the radio worked and they felt like doing something more than lying in bed, hoping that the throbbing behind glazed eyes would recede, or at least dull in time for them to do it all again the next day. When I was done, it was near dark, and I set the book down without much noise. I looked up into the hallway, half expecting someone to join me. Next, I'll read, if you haven't been to the Way Bay event at Banff at the Berkeley Art Museum, it's a fantastic exhibit. And there's a postcard project to which like various Berkeley poets and writers have contributed. And I was lucky enough to contribute to that project along with many other great poets, many of whom are in this room right now. So I'm going to read my contribution to that exhibit, followed by another piece of flash fiction. This one is titled How White. The prompt was to speak on the museum. I realize now, like going to the actual exhibit, few people wrote about the museum at all, so I feel kind of cheated. But this one is about the museum. How white. Sometimes I walk in the museum and the walls are so white that it makes everything on and in and around them white too. Can you imagine that kind of whiteness? It's a kind of whiteness where if you stand too long against it, you start to feel your body disarticulating itself. It's every detail floating away and disintegrating into the walls and ceilings. It is atmospheric whiteness, like the constant humming noise of air conditioning, or the steady buzz of light bulbs overhead that melt into ambient murk, in which you forget your own thoughts. Can you imagine? Let me try again. It is like one of those optical illusions, you know, the ones where if you stare for too long, you forget your body, and things go blurry at the edges, and you feel yourself moving through space towards something you're sure will eat you alive once you meet it. I'm talking about that kind of whiteness. A white like that shade at Liberty paints, except that if you dipped a chunk of coal in this whiteness, you could crack it open and sure enough, the thing would be white through and through. But that's white, ain't it? One should not walk in the museum too often. And I'll close with a kind of, I guess like this accreted short story. And I read part of this, like 5 pieces of this, a few years ago at the Holloway reading, actually. And they were flash fictions I was writing on the occasions of various shooting deaths of black men that I started doing in like 2013. And each piece that I wrote was based off of a section from that Wallace Stevens poem, 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. So each piece is, the full title was 13 Ways of Looking at a Black Boy. I shortened it to 13 Ways, and it's an occasional story. I'm going to read the full thing now. Yeah, I'll read all 13 pieces. Yeah. 1. It was Beverly Hills in the summer, and so of course they sat at marble tables beneath the restaurant awnings, with their heels tapping uncracked concrete. They were 20 people, customers, who appeared as naturally occurring objects, fixtures of the landscape. They looked so comfortable. Even when they moved, they were unmoving, like the ruins of a bridge that's collapsed into the river. From the kitchen, an I in exile flitted from face to face, the only moving thing. 2. He has learned to operate as a loving mechanic in a field of leather straps clenched in various degrees of alarm at his presence, between two fields where his body is continuous with caressing fingers, with leather grips, with a sustained swollenness if he is lucky, with silver sleep penetration if he is not. Circulating around 3 fields where pronouncing ask the right way can make all the difference, or pronouncing ax the wrong way can make all the difference, where giving up and not pronouncing ask at all can make all the difference. 3. Loving hands are for mashing sweet potatoes and cinnamon and vanilla and butter because cake beaters leave that metallic trace, and also because when those same hands knead dough for dinner rolls, it's the transfer and trace of cinnamon that one desires. 4. He knows better than to consider himself one with any man or woman, and wouldn't desire anything like that. But you can be sure that if you've seen him in a room, he has already seen you, and has made, is making, has always made, will make the necessary adjustments. 5. His life has become a matter of breathing out, taking in, touching upon, sliding along, bumping against, curling around, slipping between, latching onto, or lapsing into innuendo. 6. For them, his body was a miracle, capacious enough to accommodate anything they might want to insert. He could absorb anything, and no insertion was too barbaric. In certain lights, they even detected the beginnings of a pleasure that veiled his face. A true miracle, that body, though when it was gone, it did not occur to them to wonder how they ever got along without it. 7. This one's texture is smooth, frictionless, so fine that it slips through memory's sieve. Still, every passage leaves a residue. So there's a golden bird that once perched astride a drive-through chicken shack on Slauson, its presence a bit of magic. His grandma entered the shack, tarried a while with the cashier, and returned a while later with bags of chicken, dark grease stains speckling the white. 8. For him, there are no words without the spittle that accretes in the creases of full lips, as thick tongues torture themselves into noble accents, contort themselves to be understood. No words without the contortions that coax meaning from voices that will themselves beyond sense. 9. They would do anything to prevent him from slipping their embrace, their fingers tracing figures along the recess that was his body, mark the limits of their knowledge. 10. Outside of those he loves, few will ever catch sight of him turning in low light, back creasing, torso buckling under his own exertion, exalting in his own capacity for movement. To see him luxuriating, so turned inward, is enough to make the wretched cry out in euphony. 11. Striding confidently through neighborhoods to which they are only recent arrivals, they strike fear and disappointment into their own hearts when mistaking their shadows trailing along behind them for his presence. 12. If the world is turning, then somewhere he is watching back. 13. He has waited and will always wait, recessed, an accumulation of glances, a mobile signifier, a patient craftsman amid the world's flotsam. Thank you.
Thank you to Ishmael for a really lovely reading, and to everyone involved in tonight, and to Tongo, no doubt. Right, so the possibility of trading everyone can hear me, right? The possibility of trading entirely in generalities presents itself here, but as those who have had the privilege of watching or listening to a performance by Tongo Eisen-Martin will know, what we are about to hear exists only partially and differently on the page. The poems are dynamic, they change with, or rather respond to, each occasion, and so it is all the more a pleasure to be introducing a poet whose work assumes such a distinct and distinctive vitality in performance. Listening to Eisen-Martin read his work, one hears not only the conversation that the poem is having with its listener, but also the conversation it's having with its author, who in the process of unfolding the poem from the page and into the voice, reopens it in an act of recreation, which invites the participation of all those assembled to witness. Robert Duncan wrote that responsibility is to keep the ability to respond. In this spirit, Eisen-Martin's poems respond both to their being heard and their being read, educating us in a kind of expansive responsibility from which they are called into being and into sound. In one interview, Eisen-Martin identifies the function of education as precisely this, the process, I quote, of bringing you to yourself. This is, of course, by no means the limit of the educational project represented by his work with his two published collections of poetry, 2015's Someone's Dead Already and 2017's Heaven Is All Goodbyes, complementing a career as a human rights activist and educator in detention centers across the US. For anyone familiar with his poetry, that he hails from San Francisco goes without saying. The noise from which these poems emerge is the same noise that the modern city moves often violently to suppress, the modern city which, as he writes in his poem Faceless, is not a city but a prison. Verbatim, my dear, if it is not a city, it is a prison. If it has a prison, it is a prison, not a city. These poems demand that one hears in this noise the possibility of what in another interview, Eisen-Martin calls the love before resistance, without ever forgetting that, and I quote again, nothing out here can be redeemed. It is a poetry of place resisting the reterritorialization imposed by a ruling class that clings most of all to the murderous illusion of its own innocence. And to recognize this resistance is to be made aware of a deeper capacity for expression of our need to be together than most are prepared to associate with politics. There is no doubt more to say, but there's someone here to say it better than I, for one, could hope to. I'd like to welcome, on behalf of the Holloway series and all assembled here tonight, Tongo Eisen-Martin.
Can you hear me? Man, thank everybody in this room. Guided by teeth goes this country. There's a cow's mouth on the flag. A peculiar notepad holds street life dear, but the writer is not here. He's somewhere talking to tombstones about the good old days, or splashing reborn water on his latest face, or wondering how his old gun is doing in the afterlife, wondering how much death trap is in those gas station aisles that got to be $1 million a day on this concrete island. New engine in the moon why it never goes down. I mean 72 straight hours of night, at least according to everyone's posture around here. 8:30 in the morning is really 30 minutes to closing. The city shuts down for a sleepy rat race. Elevators shoe shuffle to the nearest heaven, laughing with rats the whole way up. Scabs everywhere, in puddles of city, in concentrated schools, in TV-lit warm rooms. The light reveals military fatigue when it hits just right on the ties that are wrapped around the necks of lazy white guys. Empire is too easy, baby. Yeah, chant at the walls all summer if you feel like it. The best way for a target to move is shooting back. Running for a tree line made of freeways. Wisdom says against a war machine on Tuesday you stand no chance, but may we be the last poor men to play it safe. Cow's mouth on the flag. A politician raises his hand and the crowd shows their teeth. An oligarch raises his hand, little girls are not safe outside. You are all high, depressed, and comrades in function. 15 minutes to closing and the city has survived another black rebellion. Stay down. And don't you love how deadly things whisper in the moment, men killed like feathers fall with everybody screaming inside. The writer knows that death is not a matter of dignity, rather humor. In a house that smells like roach races, nuclear percentages on torn stoves, I mean here life never was. Just lazy matches and manic inhumanity, hands rushing away from life toward stoves. What are we doing here? Surviving. For no reason in particular. Because nobody's gone far today. Nobody will go far tomorrow. Trust me, hell and heaven cannot count. Strange gardens where secondhand clothes play, and concrete wishes to be human, so that it could be a cannibal. Where they find you drenched, and drains wish to be human, so that they could be worthy arms for you to die in. Hey, greet them all, grandson. Prepare for the day when every child is calm, and don't say we ghosts didn't write you a poem. Don't say we didn't dig your life. You remember the shotgun by the coat rack that everybody in the house knows how to use. Remember the tightrope made of needles for walking in between driveways and man-made best friends. Go ahead, grandson. Tune the street again. Never mind this country kills musicians first. Broken neck nights, scar neck life. If these walls could write lyrics, they say, what's your angle, angel eyes? 30 to 50 rounds pass by on the street with no daughters. This street has no sons, just young prisoners of war in a racist city that means to make capital, and we know so much. We know it all. We were stood against walls. Who's on the third cross around here? Cow's mouth, salivating over the street. And that is the story of why we aim at teeth. Take the keys out of my pocket, because these pockets are tight. One of these days I'm going to start saying the titles of poems. But not today. Apparently, too much of San Francisco was not there in the first place. This dream requires more condemned Africans. Or put another way, state violence rises down. Or still life is just getting warmed up. Or army life is looking for a new church and ignored all other suggestions. Or folktale writers have not made up their minds as to who is going to be their friends. You know, this is the worst downtown yet. And I have borrowed a cigarette everywhere. I've taken many a walk to the back of a bus that led on out the back of a storyteller's prison sentence, then on out the back of slave scars, but this is my comeback face. I left my watch on the public bathroom sink and took the toilet with me. I threw it at the first bus I saw, eating single mothers half alive. It flew through the bus line number, then on out the front of the White House. Hopefully you find comfort downtown. But if not, we brought you enough cigarette filters to make a decent winter coat. A special species of handshake lets all know who's king and what's the lifespan of uniform cloth. This coffin needs to quit acting like those are birds singing. Rusty nails have no wings, have no voice other than that of a white world dying. Their book pages in the gas pump, catchy, isn't it? The way 3 nooses is the rule, or the way potato sack masks go so well with radio codes, or the way condemned Africans fought their way back to the ocean only to find waves made of 1920s burnt up piano parts, European backdoor deals, and red flowers for widows who spent all day in the sun mumbling in San Francisco. Red flowers, but what's the color of a doctor visit? There are book titles in the streets. Book titles like Hero, You Make a Better Zero. Or, a fur coat lady, the president is dead. Or, pay me back in children. Or, they hung up their bodies in their own museums. And other book titles pulled from a drum solo. Run here, hero. Lie at the hiding place. All the bullets in 10 precincts know where to go. There's no heaven nor any other good idea in the sky. Politics means that people did it and people do it. Understand that when in San Francisco and other places that were never really there. I bet this ocean thinks it's an ocean, but it's not. It's just 6th and Mission Street. All know who's king. King of thin things, you know. Like America, I am proud to deserve to die. I'm going to eat my dinner extra slow tonight in this police state candy dispenser you all call a neighborhood. No set of manners goes unpunished. Never mind a murderer's insomnia or the tea kettle preparing everyone for police sirens. That's the end. And let's applaud one more time for Ishmael who came up. Y'all clap longer for him then. A tour guide, through your robbery, he also is. Cigarette saying, look what I did about your silence. Ransom water and box spring gold this decade is only for accent grooming, I guess. Ransom water and box spring gold, the corner store must die. War games, I guess. All these tongues from his jump. The start of mass destruction begins and ends in restaurant bathrooms that some people use and other people clean. You telling me there's a rag in the sky? Waiting for you, yes. We've written a scene. We set a stage. You know, we should have fit in warehouse jobs are for communists, but now more corridor and hallway have walked into our lives. Now the whistling is less playful and the barbed wire overcrowded too, my dear. If it is not a city, it is a prison. If it has a prison, it is a prison, not a city. When a courtyard talks on behalf of military issue, all walks take place outside of the body. Dear life to your left, a medieval painting to your right. You know, none of this really makes an impression. Crop people living in thin air, you have 5 minutes to learn how to see through this breeze. When a mask goes sideways, barbed wire becomes the floor. Barbed wire becomes the roof 40 feet into the sky becomes out of bounds. When a mass breaks in half, mind which way the eyes go. They killed the world for the sake of giving everyone the same backstory. We're watching Gary, Indiana fight itself into the sky. Old pennies for wind. For that wind feeling you get before the hood goes up and over your headache. Pennies that stick together, mocking all aspirations. Stuck Together Pennies was the first newspaper I ever read, along with the storefront dwelling army that always lets us down, where the Holy Spirit favors the backbone. Souls in a situation that offer 100 ways to remain a loser. Souls watching a clock hoping that eyes don't lie to sad people. What was we talking about again? The narrator asked the graveyard. 10 minutes flat, said the graveyard. The funeral only took 10 minutes. Never tell that to anyone. You just gonna pin the 90s on me? All 30 years of it. Then why should I know the difference between sleep and satire? The pyramid of corner stores fell on our heads. We died right away. That building wants to climb up and jump off another building. These are downtown decisions. Somewhere on this planet, it's August 7th and we running down the rust, thinking one more needs to come with me. What evaporated on Earth so that we could be sent back down? A conductor of minds in a citywide symphony, waving souls to sing. He also is. I'm off to make a church bell out of a bank window. Kitchens meant more to the masses back in the day, and before that we had no enemy. Somewhere in America, the prison bus is running on time. You're going to lose that job before the revolution hits. Somewhere I won't be home for breakfast. Everyone out here now knows my name, and I won't be turned against for at least 4 months. The cop in the picket line is a hard-working rookie. The sign in my hands is getting more and more laughs. It says, the picket line got cops in it. I can take care of those windows for you if you want, but someone else got to go inside your gas tank. It was clear to me that rich people had talked too much this year. And once you go ahead and throw down that marble park bench everyone's looking up at, get the Romans out of your mind. And maybe a good night's sleep would have changed the last 20 years of my life. Playing an instrument is like punching a wall. What would you have me do? Replace the population? Give brotherhood back to the winter? Stop smoking cigarettes with the barely dead? They listen in on the Sabbath. Police called the police on me. There was a white candlestick beneath my detention. I ruined the soup again, thought the judge, as he took off his pilgrim robe behind the white people's door and more. I didn't get lucky. I got what was coming to me, he told. Say, fight me back, the man said. Of course, to himself, watching windows with a will to live. Tin can on his left shoulder, enjoying the bright, brand new light with all party goers, both supernatural and supernaturally down to earth. And what is this elevator traveling side to side? Like 1,000 bit of Polaroid pictures that you actually try to eat. All the furniture on this street nailed to the cement. Cheap furniture, but we have commitment. This morning, an essay opens the conversation between enemies. Why? Because you control every grain of processed sugar between here and a poor man's border? Because in the tin can on my left shoulder, I can hear the engines of deindustrialization? You should get in the painting, Tell lies more deeply. This month I'm rooting for the traitor. Carting cement to my pillow. Here we will build. I'm high again, not talking much. And once you climb up the organ pipe to our apartment floor, I'm high again. Calling everything church, singing along to a courtyard. Thanks to a horn player's holy pastime, I'm just putting a real jacket on it. Talk about a real 5 years. Keep memories like these in the pocket next to the toll receipt. That man lost a wager with the God of good causes. Stood up for himself a little too late. Maybe too early. I can still see 20 angles of his jaw zigzagging through the cold world of deindustrialization. There's an art to it. I will tell my closest friends one day, if you reverse the car any farther, you will run over all the scenes in the back of your mind. I never cared for teachers. Just the patterns of their fainting spells, and of course induced by wall art. All that to say, propaganda is courage, The price sticker hides my tattoo. I treasure my problem with the world. My mother becomes from Brooklyn first thing in the morning. That's a proverb around these parts. Proverb, a peasant entrance password, writing short notes to famous Europeans on the back of postcards with ransom requests. They reply with a newsreel or cigarette announcement. I can't tell the difference. Noble dollars, then you die inside, but on the inside. They call it sleeping deeper than your stalker. Stalker's all that bad makes you, says a great spirit dressed in the bloody rags tuxedos became. Meanwhile, my punch is feared by no one. Proud of yourself? I asked my fret hand. Porch lights is what they call our guns. I've seen this house in a dream. I believe a trumpet was the first possessed object to fly. Keep going. Keep going, she cheers. And draft in the room becomes a toddler. Toddler's obsessed with an altar. The altar becomes a runaway train. I got 1,000 paintings like these cascading down my skinny arms. Dictionaries piled up to the window bars. A reminder to the population that your blanket can work with or against you. Human reef. We will be a big human reef for concepts that finally gain a metaphysical nature. And they will swim around our beautiful poses. We stopped being flashbacks, then stopped being 3 different people. Then I was alone. The pistol 1 city away. One of the drug triangle's lines runs through my head. I tap the bottle twice and consider the dead refreshed. Don't you want to rest your bravery? Don't you want to be a coward for a little bit? Back and forth to a panic attack with no problems, nor fears. The man gets a facial expression finally, and Friday finally goes his way. His life is finally talked about happily in his head. You know, I can't possess the body of a hermit. I must be the last of his smoke. Now running the other way with 3 blocks of alley tucked under my arms. You ever see a man get to the bottom of his soul in a car ride down a missing cousin street, half step to the right? I mean, I took the whole car outside of history. Half step to the right, I mean, a whole pack of wolves stepped to my left. Road marker is what I call the light bulb we had for a sun. A whole civilization might slink to the sink, or a chain gang shuffling next to a sucker, also known as the long look in the mirror. A stack of money starts talking from 4 cities away. The end. Don't go. Please. I'm begging you. Sit down. What is that? Is that yoga? Was that a yoga mat? Fuck yoga. Stay with us. All right. Make it worth your while right now. Okay. Just did one more run. Just take this last little run and you, all right? I'm gonna go in for you right pressure. Okay. All right. From a 2-floor skyline, an abandoned house talked to me. It said, "Young man, you are heroic and 10 years old. Among 20 generations of friends. Friends will free fall away. They'll free fall up. Free fall to walls with 5th grade speed to industrial paint behind secondhand fences. A young man use quick knife tones. Be bone and brass. Be last laugh music. You are always leaving. Always one change of clothes from the door, a life and escape." A 2-floor skyline says you're the guy that dies in the middle. The friend more blues than skin. The face that cheap hotel schizophrenics can place with 90 mile per hour right eyes among dry heat killers. Once children, 3 feet high, and roaming and repeating and aiming at cotton mirrors that hang on breathing walls. You were 10 years old, tagging along, yawning at well-lit violence, whistling tool shop songs. You will be useful. You will be high and alone, flying on a nephew dragon from a $20 family in a sky that calls itself just more soil. Around walls that are just walls, except these walls suggest you make wives out of highs and currency. Here the air is polite to sleepy glass and bullying walls. Young man, you will come to admit that sometimes suicide is power. And some people live stronger as ghosts. And sometimes the afterlife empties. Billions of souls enter objects like playground bullets and abandoned door frames. Even broken glass will prove it has voice too. There are 24 hours behind your back. Look over your shoulder right now. Can you hear it? The sound of drums punching themselves out. The sound of piano parts learned in between assassination attempts, be bone and brass. Be bone enough for 2 souls, be invincible again. Suffer red-eyed accents, professional fingertips, get the victim, 6 in the morning, beer the first month of probation, and shout at the wall. See these words that shouldn't be home. Look behind you again, be invincible again, be windward, be a sad machete, be her son. Be a thief, steal his back, laugh too long, and never look away. The afterlife will empty and walk you home. We had the funeral in the garage, but I think he was long gone. A narrator on distant rooftop smoking with new friends. From beyond the visual's skyline, serious footwork can be seen, especially when loose acquaintances look at the flowers and candles with opera violence on their minds. Introducing you to the colony when the concrete was in its prime and not for shuffles. 2 different dates share the same daylight. We slow walk from the corner store into a flashback. Dust doing most of the talking about weird wars on the streets and whoever's fixing the drinks tonight, whoever is must be suicidal. You see there's a chessboard underneath these tough guys. From beyond the visual's jungle is the easy side of autobiography. A pretty interesting place to start a war from. Front yards are for having problems with the world. It's an easy range for the angel of everything under the sun. That's right. I can cut my throat with the sun. Hold your breath on my street if that's what you've always done. I tell you what his eyes say. They say, all dust eventually has to be human. In his pockets is winter already, knuckled and wrist and silent. In street green letters, here lies in half asleep young skin and tattered page 1. Page 1, all staircases are open air and will be the first to talk if the poor so will it. Page 2 is just pieces of subtitle, mouths talk last. Page 3, someone's dead already. Someone has taught them the sound. Page 4, every system is suicidal, the poor so will it. Bust loose its root, last stop already, let us sleep again. It's all staircase air, and I remember when he was eye to eye with the lowest branch, crying breath into the hand of an avenue. Our shirts made somewhere in the land of first hand. Trash wasn't yet trash. Running away really wasn't running away. Shoes would witness an informal prayer, something like, I know you see me, what should I call you? I'll never be anything you need to forgive. And we've been to heaven years ago. Heaven becomes our street shoulders, which are his, which is like a homegrown cadence on a city bus, rubber and brief eyes. He was the Saint of Strays, The first story you learn in San Francisco, moving with Slider Street, which is his, my little brother slides. The smoke says still. A lot of God can happen in 3 seconds. Not much heaven, though. Here's a man before a fight. Leave me alone type character. Emerging from the penniless death of a one-way street fiction. That's just a fancy way of saying I'm going to make it even if I got to drive backwards. All I got is chord changes and 1,000 backhands. Driving the street like I'm choking. A car full of nephews. Hasn't been a son since November, and there hasn't been a street I can't choke to death. This city better back down. Now you see this gun on the table? And something about staring until it all feels stable. Why wouldn't I protect everyone? All my death sleep late. My son better be quick. My daughter better shoot first. Because see, we fall for no one. We fall for nothing. Okay, the first thing you feel is the heat. This lady would tell me, telling me about possession, drink like niggas, what I'm mostly hearing. Most of the world leaves me alone to breathe smog like a giant, to go to jail every once in a while when the genocide kicks up in late May, when politicians have too easy a time. I'm gassing backwards out a one-way street in honor of myself and in honor of you, if you understand the nature of the world. And how long I've been just like my father. One hell of a resemblance says the anxiety of the neighborhood. This is crossroads narrative. So much crossroads, they got in the habit of turn back only to find themselves remembering me. But not my last words. A man before a fight should feel the heat. But there's nothing to keep in mind, nothing to remember. Really, there's nothing to be. Just this moment, then another, then stare, then it all becomes stable. Then the table legs go fuzzy, and Friday's an unfamiliar face peeking in the window. It's cool to panic for a second. Composure is wasted on your worst enemies. People are marked on that sidewalk. You the only thing life-size. Everybody knows this in a wire hanger empire. When the blood stops walking, this feeling isn't father enough to be permission to fold. You better swing one more time. That father of yours rose from the grave and said, just give me 5 more minutes. He said, running water is a myth. It's us who are running up, down, and all alongside this water. And people don't rise from the grave. It's us who flip all around their body. So beware when the people around you look like they're all about to jump. It might be your time. You'll feel the heat. And when 4 walls demand to be 4 walls and the earth outside mutes, don't panic. Don't try to recreate the earth outside. Don't tell jokes to yourself. Don't even talk disrespectfully to the 4 walls. Instead, unclench your fist and walk away. There might be heaven if you understand the nature of the world. All right. I appreciate it. That was all I asked for. You gonna stay for some more? Hell yeah. Do you have any requests? All right. That's how I put that. All right. Capitalists dropped 10 tons of barbed wire onto my Tuesday shift. We shot back at their chimpanzee pilot for the sport. The contractor has already smoked 3 cigars, only an hour into my court appearance shift. The supervisor likes Ismail, says it reminds him of when he ran the streets, and all I remember is we shot back. A gated puppet dances alone. Bars and jigs says I am the happy one of Legion. Meanwhile, kids commit childhood behind his wooden plaster joints. Wire dodgers under this silly puppet. A silly puppet dancing for white heaven. Like weapon is the jacket, and precinct holds Friday hostage, we go through a fossil jaw and see a judge. The tunnel at the end of the light. I sleep until woke by dry cereal and surrender. This holding cell only needs a giant panhandler's palm to shake us coin men around. I'm breaking my fingers for my sister's bill collectors. Garage casket open, I mean all third world parallels kill openly. Breaking my lungs for my sister's rent on the sculptor of construction dust. I miss cigarettes by mid-morning. I miss Hennessy by sundown. I miss murder by inches, $5 bills, cherish my days outside, always behind. There's no concentration in this courtroom. Just a bunch of B+ students living out their nightmares. How do I plead? How do I plead with a straight face? 2 blocks up is a reoccurring cliff, along with slavish paraphernalia, along with the ordinary panhandler, along with ethnic parade history, along with the ethnic parade, along with 13th graders. But let's talk about the fact that 4 dead children later, I still don't have a problem beating you up in front of everybody. Let's talk about the fact that money is death. Down to my last $5 is what I call this shoe. 10 o'clock political education is what I call this dream. I got the job is what I call this blues. 2 days later is what I call a cliff. Capitalists eat until the world is blurry to them. These streets are made of saliva. Some people are made of saliva too. They usually have on uniforms. While the crazy man spins round and round trying to make a record out of this mass production jungle, maybe I'll join him, count cash and cry. These streets are made of saliva, and white sheets are worn by a building in which kids are supposed to learn how to read well. White sheets on the highway too. Another mirror needs their head on a pipe. One down is just one down, but you know, you tell all this to the masses and your teacher will pipeline you. They told me I was jewelry. They told me this is jungle. Well, maybe not jungle, more like 50 machine guns planted in the ground. It's raining faces again in California. What does this say about heaven? What does it say about the people you killed? Waiting lines got so exhausted, a million minds dropped all these faces at once. If the fascists can read the lips of a giant talking in his sleep, we might as well make our demands in prison letters. Today was born the most important trigger finger in the world. Today I begun counting down the pages between now and a pile of books by a tunnel. Chicago is going to walk out of Chicago one day. Babies will drag street signs like old toys. Today the most important letter left prison. Babies will laugh at flags like faces that have disappeared. Maybe I'll join them. But for now, these streets are made of saliva, and we raise half full glasses to the basements that meant nothing, and the working poor who live there. We get shot. We get white sheets on California, where the kitchen table likes to talk as much as the walls, and romance on the porch consists of hard residing. I mean, in this picture, characters talk spit and know they hard to kill. The kitchen table knows this. The porch is almost convinced that one down is just one down. This town is coming to town. A circus watching itself. Half distracted, half suicidal, thrilled children dressed as cops, thrilled children preaching and policing and intaking and hiring and snatching your money. This town's coming to town with tough trademarks to follow. Today, I watch capitalism walk on water and people play dead so that they could be part of America. That's the end. take one more pass, and it's over. Is my people still there? You still here? First cigarette of this poem is called The Simplicity of Talent, which will probably be followed by a poem called Skid Bit. And so concludes. The first cigarette makes this parking lot my bedside. The second cigarette makes this parking lot my front pocket. Next, I hold a witness like a newborn, though half-hearted. Brittle teeth by my art. Watch how we talk in depopulated circles. You caught me. You caught me, said the hangman to the condemned. You caught me red-handed, but the hangman's hand kept moving, nevertheless. Biting flags eastbound and other familiar sound effects a revolutionary would call us a landless fire. The night train agrees that these are my keys. I'm just admiring your fabric, Lord. My art is rational, therefore my life is in danger. Traveling up the tap this time, and it looks like water was never here, just jail noise and the jail noise politicians speak. This world is weak. I lost this graffiti too many times. I tell the witness, all characters are in motion regardless of what that day did to your disposition. I also left that piece of good news in the ashtray next to my nickname. And every room has a kitchen in it. Every life has company to feed. Every room has a rumble in a corner. 8th grade heroin in my hand along with pieces of an uncle, a purgatory grease fire got us worried. A phone rings in 1988 and the epoch begins when a mother hangs up. This is not writing poems. This is wishing carloads well. Here comes the tap water whistling past our heads. Institution tile under brake pedals matching white watches painted on palms for smash and grab recollections. People who are related by ballad, hot plate failures, fishing for proletarians. The matchstick that's a draft card by the time the loaner finishes sweeping the train, also related by ballad. Underpaved streets hanging like strips of film in thin air. I miss the carpentry more than the religion. I tore the tattoo out of my uncle's picture and lent it to my friends, one left cross at a time, like mine behind my back. They say the child will do better upside down. The child's cake party is in the precinct. Mainstream tune playing upside down. T-shirt with their face on it printed on the cop's thumb. 28 hours later, a headrest will do. The city rain feels like clientele. I dozed on the back of a bus and woke in the mind of a 3-story man. And God wants you here with that crowbar in your hand. All of the world is a 3rd floor. Seasons invent themselves, but we invent the underground. Cause and effect is nothing but a casual venue. I once played. It decided not to kill me like giving loose chains. Hey, don't teeter now, tall man. I was nobody at point blank range. Nobody finally again. Lung first, I fell. A love, then a rule, then a hate. Dance moves within murder attempts within dance moves. Lean back and be celebrated by small people, he said. The clothes on my life teacher needed new patches. Sit back and disrespect it all. I've given up on counter-revolution. I said, well, then here's your weapon, little bank. Hey, that's our father you writing graffiti on. Horn players beat him up and everyone left the altercation a better person. Knowing what you know now, would you still have written fortunes on the bottom of church shoes and put them back on the rack? And how does everyone think that a rich guy is their twin? Along with other tantrums is my cue. Fortune teller half sleeps while talking about a mirror treading all over the posters in my childhood room and how cold calculation really mothers nothing. And a vision of chess pieces and chains. He says, then, my friend, you will have fear. And then you will have form. I am the son of a hospital room. In a world of bedpans, water does not know his own. I strain to hear every narrator in the room. They are the cycling shifts in his face. A sideless supernatural, his face is that strain, freeze and fade, wander in, wander away. I say, let's live this hour with no meaning. I am a son, he is the finish. I think there's been more for you than for me, I say, and we smile like water would. And what I know now, there was a dark red Sunday sitting under that Wednesday afternoon. A dark red Sunday, a wolf wearing mild skies. What I know now, Chicago streets collect and guard souls. Sons respect their last breath fathers. Fathers pass away in between two conversations. I know our blood is 1,000 bullets here. We are skin and edge, fast hands, hunched rivers, prison canvas, strange leaves. We agree, are organized, now named, more canvas, more prison, more sketches reach a sun, more generals might reach a womb. I mean, I should talk to his ghost with a prison pencil. Grew up watching sketch women and men turn and walk away from the foreground. You know, cardboard can't look that deep. 43rd Street collected souls. I said, Pops, as you travel where life means a little less, and home perhaps more, be any man that suits you. Sift low air, kneel in hurricane, splash a bending image over your face. Perhaps an image of us. Walk east, I guess. Eat hurricane. Let this lonely love you. Do not sing, do not belong, do not understand, do nothing for now. Perhaps see us again. My brother and I are driving in an empty cell lane. We are God's equal to these settlers. They might throw us under the shift change. We take wolf naps. We don't know what else we're good at besides this traveling. State lines in the nighttide, passing through beachhead America, passing with hurricane memory, 3,000 exits of sludge-bathed apartheid. You know, everything south of Canada is extrajudicial gun oil in your local unemployment factory. In a few hours we will fit in. Relax for now. How about the car and I'm a dirty shoe illusion? Leaning on the trunk with the ghosts of switchblades and other rusty surfaces. I'm enemy human and traveling. Father's ashes on the back seat, behind two sons, in a lane not for metaphor. Well, maybe a metaphor about something unfinished. 1 million hands passing us through the Midwest. Last wishes by way of fishtail, daydreams by way of collision, home in the badlands of translation, relaxed passing, great-grandparents' finger bones, father's ashes, no longer arms, just tattoos. Badlands imagination, barreling, translating a father's last trip home. We don't know what else we good at besides this traveling. Exits in collage, exits in pieces, pieces of 1970s kitchen plates, and a good luck refrigerator we still ain't ate, the narcotic swing of how we see yesterday, get out the car against desperate white supremacy, gas station greetings, stray dogs and other earthborn alarms, we are straight deadly, against desperate white supremacy and other senses that die silly and have murdered. We don't know what else we could besides just traveling. 2 corners of the total is us. Character interstate on a journey of 1,000,000 parallels. Some like us better high, some like us better drunk. Every late night has a summer to it. Cousin Breeze and Murder Rate barreling like duck-born love songs. Your ancestors are smiling as we pass the time. When we ride this language past Gary 3000, a stomach with cast iron lining, proud forearms for meals. 3-man ghost story. Fishers of ourselves. Cards dealt. Narrative implied. It's something unfinished. Like an Indiana hurricane, or 2 midnights in Milwaukee. No arms, no tattoos, no Chicago ever again. We don't know what else we good at besides this travel. And besides, heaven is all goodbyes anyway. Keys have gone back into my pocket. Goodbye to you, my friend in the back. Just want to thank, you, Jeff. I want to thank the Holloway series. I would like to thank the University of California. Leo, I would very much like to thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ishmael. Scrape yourselves out of your seats and go consider the page-based version of those poems right now. Thank you.